know last time we talked about your journey and we only scraped the tiniest centimetre off the top of the iceberg. But your journey, I think, has been so helpful to hear, coming in from almost having no grid for it to getting immersed in it, and then being able to come out of the place of immersion and still have the atmosphere of it and the intention of it in your life. How do you just deal with the question? It's a typical question, and we were joking about it even before we pressed record. Fasting is an Old Testament thing. Jesus doesn't say fast. We get to live in grace, we get to live in freedom. We don't need to do fasting, tithing. It's all Old Testament.
Yeah.
Now, we can leave tithing for another time, but how do you respond to that based on what you've dug up in the scriptures, what you've been immersed in, and what you're doing now? What's your response to that?
Yeah, it's actually one of the most common questions I ever get asked about fasting. And I think for me, one of the biggest things is when I've read scripture, especially not even looking at Old Testament, but looking at the words of Jesus. And I think we mentioned this a little bit in the last podcast, where we talked about Jesus saying that when the bridegroom is taken away, in that day they will fast. It's not saying they can choose to fast. Jesus doesn't really give that flexibility in that. And as well, I think as you look in Matthew 6:16-18 as well, Jesus is talking about fasting in these scriptures, and he says 3 times, when you fast.
Yeah.
And it's talking about when you fast. And there's this idea that Jesus is giving, where it's saying, actually, it's not saying, if you choose to fast, you've got this option. If you feel like you want to, or when they did fast, this is how they did it. It's saying,
it's implicit.
Yeah, it's
that you're going
this kind of thing. Like Jesus is like, well, I don't need to tell you to do it explicitly by saying you must fast, because it's implied that this is just part of our spiritual growth and our spiritual walk with God. I've noticed when I fast, my prayer life becomes so much more exciting and so much more dynamic, because I start to go into this place of dependency on God that I don't have when I'm not fasting.
Okay, so let me dive in there with a practical thing, because for most people, I'll just speak about myself. When I fast, I spend virtually the entire time thinking about food. Having not thought about food all the rest of the week, even though I know I'm going to have it, I suddenly think about what I want to cook. The first time I ever fasted, to pass the time, I cooked 2 lasagnas.
Excellent, yeah.
I was like, why on earth would I do this? Why? What am I doing? How do you speak to the person like me who wants it to be a discipline of prayer and wants it to be a weapon against someone, some situation, like you said in the last episode, me and my husband are fasting on behalf of someone else and their circumstance. We want it to be like this amazing divine encounter, and yet you end up just thinking about cereal the whole time. How do you get from that to these amazing times of prayer when I'm fasting? And I do have a personal testimony which I may share later, but you're more of an expert than I am. How do you start seeing the transition away from, as Kate Seidel says, from out of the flesh and into the spirit? How do you?
And as well, I'm by no means an expert on this. I just know this is something that I want to take ownership of in my life. And
you're owning it more than I'm owning it right now. Let's put it that way.
So I'm not trying to be super spiritual, and as well, because the thing is, sometimes, especially when I'm doing a longer fast, I'll spend ages on Pinterest looking at food recipes, and it's so bad.
That's good. I think people need to hear that.
Yeah, I'm sometimes it just helps, because I think, oh yeah, look at all this yummy food, and then I forget that I'm, just move on. But I think for me, it's that ownership and choosing it. It's one thing to say I'm going to fast and remove food from my life, but there's another thing which says that my motive and my motivation is to draw closer to God, or to stand in the gap in the place of intercession for others, and actually use a time where you would be eating or preparing food to enter into prayer and to press in that place. And I think so often it's like people are like, well, I'm just going to fast and I'm going to be really busy and distract myself.
Right.
And I think that's one of the most common things that I see, and even for myself, I knew especially when I came out of the prayer environment back into the UK, that was one of the things I started to do, was I would just pack my day on the days I was fasting to distract myself from the fact that I wasn't eating. And actually the Lord just really challenged me and was like, it's not about the action, it's about the heart. And it's like, that's what it's all. God is so much more concerned with our heart than the things that we do. And so I want to make sure that when I'm fasting, it's my heart posture that says I want to give at least one day a week, God, where I remove an earthly pleasure to increase the pleasure of your presence in my life. by using the time where I would be eating and enjoying that earthly pleasure to enjoy your company and your pleasure. And so I think with anybody, I would just say to them, like, it's just do it and give it a go, but do it for the heart thing that's saying, I'm not doing it because I feel condemned or whatever, but do it because I feel convicted, because I want a greater increase of God.
How do you speak about fasting to someone who's maybe feeling that level of pressure from the church or just internally to do it?
As you start to do it, you'll start to find the delight in it, and it's the thing of, I always just start by asking God, okay, I feel this pressure, I feel this need that I need to pray, that I should be fasting, that I should be doing this. I'm feeling like this kind of like, oh, I need to do it. And often I think that's just God just stirring us in a way, and sometimes he uses that kind of that style of talking to us to actually get us into doing it. But it's just asking God one thing, and if you don't want to do food or you don't feel like you can do food, it's asking for just a practical thing. Maybe it's saying, okay, I'm not going to look at social media until lunchtime. You know, it's just choosing one thing and saying, okay, I'm just going to give it a go. The only time it's fasting becomes a bad thing is if your motive all of a sudden is coming from an unhealthy place or a performance place, or maybe something to do with your identity. Often I think I've noticed a few times where people are fasting more and more because of their image and their self-image, and they have this unhealthy attachment. And I think, or it's just this orphan mentality that says, I have to do this, otherwise God will separate himself from me, or won't want to be with me. If you never fast a day in your life, like, God still wants to be with you. But there is something about us showing him how much we want to be with him through an act of surrender,
the heart,
and sacrifice. And that's it. And you know, it says that fire falls on sacrifice. And when we sacrifice this pleasure of food or social media, and what fasting really is giving up a earthly pleasure for the greater pleasure of Jesus. That's something that
David says, I won't offer the Lord sacrifice that have cost me nothing.
I'm faced with the reality of who I truly am when I've got no food in me and my blood sugars are low, and I can't, run to a false comfort of coffee or tea or chocolate to help my heart when I'm having a hard time. It's like
the understanding the cost, but not obsessing about the cost, because the obsession about the cost can draw you away from doing it. But the lack of understanding about the cost can frustrate your plans to do it as well. So I just want to ask for the people who are listening and thinking, I've tried this in the past, mixed success or no success, or success unknown. What would your advice be to people who are stepping into this maybe for the first time, or re-stepping into it after an absence? This is all great, I agree with it, and I think I should be doing it. What's a step?
So I think it's a spiritual discipline, and so I think with any discipline, like going to the gym or losing weight or anything just earthly where we're trying to discipline ourselves, it's create a routine that you can stick to, and don't start too big. I think I remember as a kid being like, with reading my Bible, I would get this kind of revelation that I want to read my Bible more, and I'm going to read for 3 hours every single
read a book
day.
Every day.
Yeah. And you just set the standard too high. And I'm like, it's you just set the standard low and you overachieve if you can. But the standard's low that you're always going to achieve. And
That's
so for me, I'm like, I stuck to the Tuesdays. Tuesday is the day I fast still. I just stuck to that day because it just worked. And actually, I now work in a coffee shop every Tuesday, and it is so difficult to be around good food and coffee and everything. But I know that act of fasting and that act of surrender is bringing me closer to God. If it's easy, you've missed the point of fasting. There should be a sense of struggling and suffering, because what we're doing in that place of kind of wrestling with ourselves is that we're drawing ourselves closer into that intimacy and that relationship with God.
If I want to grow as a runner, it's easy if I just run to the end of my road and back, which takes me 40 seconds, but I'm not really stretching myself. No. But if I go straight to the London Marathon entry, then I've clearly shot too far, too high there, so I've got to find... And it's probably going to put you off running ever again. Absolutely.
To go into that kind of thing. And I think it's the same with fasting. It's the same with any discipline. It's just making those small choices and saying to yourself, okay, you know what, I missed dinner and that was totally fine. I made it through. Okay, now I'm going to miss breakfast and dinner, and I'm just going to eat lunch today, and that's what I'm going to do.
That's really good. I really like what you said there about start small with an element of sacrifice,
Mm-hmm.
make it achievable and make it possible for you to overachieve it.
And I would definitely recommend a social media fast as well.
Yeah.
Yes, just very quickly over. Me and my husband Dan have just done 21 days social media fast to break complacency off our life was why we fasted, because we noticed that in this just switching off, there was a complacency that came in, and our spiritual hunger has soared as we've sat there, and we did a complete media fast, so no TV, no movies, no social media, and we were like, what do we do with our evenings? Like, we really were shocked. We didn't know what to do. We normally would sit on our phones or...
Does that include Dan G's?
Oh no, he still played his games.
his mobile games, because I know he loves them.
Yeah, but we were like, but it was so hard. But actually we noticed the hunger that has come on us, and the like intimacy and the depths of relationship that's come on us as we remove something that has just become part of everybody's everyday life. Like, when was the last time you did a whole day without watching TV or watching YouTube or looking on Facebook? Because I couldn't remember the last time I had that. And
you realise the degree of which those things can become idols.
Yeah.
And if you don't get to watch your next episode of something, or have your little personal treat that you convince yourself you've earned at the end of every day, whether you have or haven't.
That's it. And you know how many people say, I'm going to switch off by going onto social media?
Yeah. Well, I don't know whether you get these weekly reports of how much time, and I looked at the one that came up yesterday, 9:30 yesterday, this came up, and the first is 2 sentences. The first sentence, I was thinking pretty good about myself. It's like, hey, I'm doing pretty good as a human being. And the first sentence is, last week your screen time was down 24%. Excellent.
Yeah.
Well done, you. For an average of 3 hours and 49 minutes a day.
Yeah.
So near on 4 hours a day, I'm staring at my screen. And I wanted to go high five everybody because I'm down 24%. So my reduced amount is 4 hours a day. That's scary.
It is. And that was the big challenge for us, was that I just thought, I can't live a lifestyle where my phone has more attention than God has on a day-by-day basis.
This has been so helpful, and I really hope that anyone listening, that what you're hearing is fasting is not something that is set aside for Benny Hinn and, Lou Engle. Fasting is something that is accessible for all of us, and that it can bring life, breakthrough, and intimacy to God. But you need to go into it with your eyes open and know that it's not going to be the worst thing you ever do in your spiritual life, nor is it going to be the easiest thing you ever do in your spiritual life, but it will be worth it. And I'm starting to see that when you do taste and see that God is good, it is the invitation and it is the motivation to come back for more. Yeah. But if you don't taste in the kingdom, then you don't grow your hunger. You if anything, you extend your time of satisfaction if you don't eat. And so that's a real challenge for me. Any thoughts just to close us up on?
No, I think it's great, and I think that's the thing that's above anything else that's pushed me through keeping fasting, keeping that lifestyle, is the encounters with God's presence that are remarkable. I had one of the longest fasts I did. I went into an open vision where I saw the flame, his eyes that burn, and I felt the heat, like I physically was burning as I was gazing on these eyes. And it's moments like that where I'm like, I would fast for the next 60 years every single week to have that encounter again, because it was that power and the love and everything that happened in that moment, the fruit of that encounter out of that place of fasting was worth it. And so I just want to encourage you, keep going and don't be satisfied until you have it, and when you've got it, you'll want more.
Amen.
So, yeah.
Thanks, Hannah. It's awesome.